In a quiet suburban neighborhood, nestled between serene parks and bustling schools, a seemingly innocent item began its journey of terror. This is the story of the demon teddy bear, a cursed object that brought horror to every family it touched. Its tale is passed down in hushed whispers, a warning of the evil that can lurk in the most unsuspecting places. Now, let us take a slow walk down the dark, empty roads and find the teddy bear. The Jacksons. It was a typical Sunday at the local church. The Jackson family, known for their active participation in the community, attended the morning service. After the service, their young daughter, Emily, wandered into the Sunday school room while her parents chatted with friends out in the hallway. In the corner of the room, Emily noticed an old teddy bear lying on the floor. Its fur was matted, and one of its button eyes hung loosely by a thread, but Emily was captivated by it. She picked up the bear, feeling an unusual warmth from it, and hugged it tightly. Unbeknownst to Emily, the closet door in the Sunday school room was slightly ajar. Inside, a horrific scene was barely visible. The Sunday school teacher, Miss Caroline, lay crumpled on the floor, her face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. The walls of the closet were scratched and smeared with what looked like dried blood. The bear had caused this tragedy, but Emily, blissfully unaware, skipped out of the room clutching her new friend. She begged her parents to let her keep the bear, and seeing no harm, they agreed. During the first week, Emily played with the bear constantly. She dressed it up in doll clothes, made it join her for tea parties, and took it everywhere with her. The bear was a comforting presence, and Emily's parents were glad to see her so happy. The Jacksons had planned a luxurious family vacation to a lavish hotel in the Caribbean. It was supposed to be a time for relaxation and bonding, surrounded by turquoise waters and white sandy beaches. They packed their bags, and Emily, of course, brought her new teddy bear. The horrors began subtly. Small animals were found dead around the hotel grounds, their bodies twisted in unnatural positions. Emily's behavior gradually changed. She became more withdrawn, and her eyes often had a vacant look. The first major incident occurred when Emily, under the bear's influence, pushed another child into the hotel pool. The child couldn't swim and had to be rescued by a frantic parent. Emily watched with eerie detachment as the child struggled for breath, her grip tightening on the bear. The staff and other guests were horrified, unable to understand how such a sweet girl could act so maliciously. The next night, Emily was found in the hotel kitchen holding a large knife. She had slashed open bags of flour and sugar, creating a chaotic mess. The staff found her just in time before she could harm herself or anyone else. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, fixated on the chaos she had caused. The plumes of flour covered her small frame, making her look like a ghostly apparition in the dim light of the kitchen. Another night, the hotel guests were awoken by the fire alarm. Emily had set fire in the lounge area. The guests and staff evacuated the hotel in panic. Fortunately, the fire was contained, but not before causing significant damage. Emily stood outside, clutching the bear, her face expressionless as the flames reflected in her eyes. The once elegant lounge was left charred, a haunting reminder of the chaos she had caused. Emily's parents, Robert and Susan, were not spared the torment. Robert began experiencing severe headaches, hearing the bear's whispers even when he was awake. Susan started seeing dark, shadowy figures following her around the hotel. One night, Robert, under the bear's influence, drove the rental car into a ditch, narrowly avoiding serious injury. The whispers filled his mind, telling him he would find peace in the darkness. The terror escalated. One evening, Susan found herself unable to move, paralyzed in her hotel bed as a shadowy figure loomed over her, whispering dark, evil threats. Her breath came in shallow gasps as cold sweat dripped down her forehead. The sensation of icy fingers brushing against her skin left her trembling long after the apparition had vanished. Robert began to suffer from night terrors. He would wake up screaming, convinced he was being buried alive. The sensation of dirt filling his mouth and lungs felt disturbingly real. He clawed at his throat, trying to clear the imaginary earth, his cries echoing through the quiet hotel corridors. The terror was so intense that he began to fear going to sleep. Emily started having violent episodes, often waking with scratches and bruises as she couldn't explain. One night, she was found standing over her younger brother with one of the kitchen knives she had taken from the hotel, her eyes blank and unseeing. Her grip on the knife was tight, her knuckles white with strain. The scene was so chilling that it left her parents shaken to their core, unable to comprehend the extent of their daughter's transformation. On the second to last night of their vacation, Emily was caught trying to tamper with the elevator controls. She had intended to trap guests inside, causing panic and fear. Her fingers danced over the buttons, her expression one of eerie calm as the alarms blared around her. The hotel security camera captured her unsettling behavior, adding to the growing unease among the staff and guests. Later that night, the bear whispered a final command to Emily to find another child and give the bear to them. The next morning, she spotted a little girl playing in the hotel lobby. Without a word, Emily approached her, handed her the bear, and walked away, a vacant expression on her face. The Thompsons. The little girl who received the bear from Emily was Sarah Thompson. Sarah's family was close-knit, living in a cozy two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. Her father, Michael, worked as an accountant, and her mother, Linda, was a stay-at-home mom. Sarah had two older brothers, Jake and Adam. The family was known for their friendly nature and strong community ties. Sarah was thrilled with the unexpected gift and carried it home. During that first week, after returning from their Caribbean vacation, Sarah adored her new teddy bear. She introduced it to her friends at school, took it on bike rides, and even had it sit at the dinner table with the family. The bear was her constant companion, and her family was happy to see her so engaged. The bear's influence over Sarah was immediate. Sarah started having terrible nightmares. She would wake up screaming, but could never remember what had frightened her. The bear whispered to her siblings as well, its voice weaving into their dreams, planting seeds of fear and chaos. One by one, the Thompson children fell under the bear's spell. Their behavior became increasingly violent and unpredictable. The oldest son, Jake, was found standing over his parents' bed with a knife one night, his eyes glazed and unseeing. Fortunately, his father rolled over at the exact right moment, and the downward forcing knife missed him by millimeters. The family was terrified. The knife stood vertical, half of the blade entrenched in the mattress, as Jake collapsed in tears, unable to explain his actions. The terror in his eyes was deep, leaving his parents bewildered and afraid. Objects in the house began to move on their own. Lights flickered, and dark shadows moved across the walls. The family dog, a loyal German shepherd, was found dead in the backyard, its body twisted and broken. The sight was gruesome, his fur matted with dried blood, eyes wide open in fear. The once lively dog had been a source of comfort, and its loss was a devastating blow to the family. Sarah's parents, Michael and Linda, also suffered. Michael started to sleepwalk, often waking up in strange places around the house. He once woke up standing on the roof, dangerously close to the edge, with no memory of how he got there. The cold night air and the distant sounds of cars below brought him back to his senses just in time. Linda became obsessed with cleaning, scrubbing the same spots over and over, muttering about invisible dirt and grime. The bear's whispers haunted them day and night, driving them to the brink of insanity. Michael started experiencing terrifying hallucinations. He saw his children covered in blood, crying out for help, but when he reached out to them, they disappeared. Each vision left him gasping for breath, sweat pouring down his face as he clutched at the walls for support. His eyes darted around, filled with fear and confusion. Unable to distinguish between reality and the horrors conjured by his mind, Linda began to see insects crawling out of the walls, covering every surface. She would scratch at her skin until it bled, convinced the bugs were under her flesh. Her arms were soon covered in angry red welts, a testament to the torment she couldn't escape. The constant scratching and the sight of imaginary insects drove her to tears, her sanity slipping away with each passing day. Jake, the oldest son, began hearing the bear's voice, urging him to harm his family. One night, he locked his siblings in the attic and set the door on fire, believing it was the only way to save them. The flames flickered and danced in his eyes as he watched, tears streaming down his face until his parents' screams pulled him back to reality. The heavy smell of smoke filled the air as he stood paralyzed by the horror of his actions, the fire spreading rapidly behind him. The bear's whispers grew more insistent, telling Sarah to pass it on. On a trip to the park, she saw a boy her age playing alone. Compelled by the bear's command, she handed it to him and walked away. The Millers. The boy who received the bear from Sarah was Tommy Miller. The Millers were a small family living in a quaint bungalow on the outskirts of town. Tommy's father, James, was a high school teacher and his mother, Catherine, worked as a nurse. Tommy had an older sister, Lily, who was in college but visited frequently. Tommy was a quiet child, often lost in his thoughts, and the bear seemed to be a comforting presence that also brought him out of his shell with others. In the first few days, Tommy was inseparable from the bear. He brought it to school, where he showed it off to his classmates and even slept with it every night. His parents noticed how much calmer he seemed and were pleased that he had found such a comforting friend. The bear's whispers twisted Tommy's dreams, turning them into horrifying visions. He began to act out violently, lashing out at his parents and siblings. The bear's voice was always in his ear, urging him to do unspeakable things. One evening, Tommy, under the bear's influence, locked his younger sister in the basement. She was found hours later, terrified but unharmed. The basement door bore deep scratches where she had tried to claw her way out, her fingers raw and bleeding. The sight of his sister's tear-streaked face haunted Tommy, even as he struggled to understand his actions. The bear's presence seemed to magnify the darkness within the house, feeding off the fear and despair of its inhabitants. Shadows danced along the walls and whispers filled the air, creating an oppressive atmosphere. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, had become a place of dread and horror. Tommy's parents, James and Catherine, were deeply affected. James began to suffer from extreme insomnia, hearing the bear's whispers in his mind, even when he was awake. He started to hallucinate, seeing figures crawling out of the walls. The sight of shadowy hands reaching for him left him trembling, unable to find solace even in the daylight. Catherine developed a severe phobia of darkness, unable to stay in a dimly lit room without breaking down. She would huddle in the corner, her eyes wide with terror, as she felt unseen eyes watching her every move. The darkness seemed to close in around her, suffocating and relentless, robbing her of peace and security. James started experiencing terrifying hallucinations. He saw his children covered in blood, crying out for help, but when he reached out to them, they disappeared. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, driving him to the brink of madness. Catherine began to hear the voices of her children crying for help, but when she searched for them, she found nothing. The sounds of their screams echoed through the house, driving her to the edge of sanity. Her nights were filled with the haunting cries, each one more desperate than the last, leaving her unable to sleep or find any peace. Tommy started seeing the ghostly apparitions of children in his room, their eyes hollow and pleading. They would whisper to him, begging for release from their torment. Their pale, translucent forms hovered at the edge of his vision, their whispered pleas growing louder with each passing night, filling him with a sense of helplessness and dread. As the previous victims, the bear eventually commanded Tommy to pass him on. On a family trip to the zoo, he handed the bear to a little girl and walked away. Tommy, like the children before him, hoped that by ridding his family of the bear, he could reclaim their lives. But the trauma lingered. The Roberts. The little girl who received the bear from Tommy was Lauren Roberts. The Roberts family was known for their close-knit bond and happy home. They lived in a picturesque Victorian house in a small town over 200 miles away. This was their last stop on their yearly family road trip. Lauren's father, David, was a lawyer, and her mother, Karen, was a freelance writer. Lauren had a younger brother, Sam, who adored her. She was thrilled with her new toy, and her family was happy to see her so excited. During the first week, Lauren took the bear everywhere. She introduced it to her friends at school, brought it to family gatherings, and even had it sleep next to her at night. The bear became an integral part of her daily life, and her parents were pleased to see her so happy. Very soon, Lauren, influenced by the bear's whispers, became withdrawn and sullen. She started having violent outbursts, scaring her parents and sibling. The bear's influence spread to the entire family, turning their dreams into nightmares and their waking hours into a series of horrifying incidents. The Roberts experienced a rash of tragedies. Their car brakes failed, leading to a near-fatal accident. The car careened off the road, narrowly missing a large tree before crashing into a ditch. The family was left shaken, the near miss leaving them acutely aware of their vulnerability. Electrical fires started inexplicably, causing severe damage to their home. Sparks flew from the outlets, and the horrid smell of burning wires filled the air. The once safe haven of their home had become a dangerous and unpredictable environment. The family dog went missing, only to be found weeks later in an empty lot down the street, its fur matted and eyes lifeless. The sight was a devastating blow to the family, the loss of their loyal pet amplifying the fear and despair that had taken root in their lives. Lauren's parents, David and Karen, were also tormented. David began to lose his sense of reality, often hearing the bear's voice even during important business meetings, causing him to act erratically at work. His colleagues noticed his distracted behavior, and his reputation began to suffer as a result. Karen developed a severe anxiety disorder, constantly feeling like she was being watched. She started to see the bear's face in reflective surfaces, its eyes glinting with dangerous intent. The constant sense of being observed left her paranoid and fearful, unable to find comfort even in her own home. One night, Laura, under the bear's influence, poured gasoline around the house and was about to set it on fire when David woke up and stopped her just in time. The family was left shaken and terrified, realizing the extent of the bear's evil. The smell of gasoline lingered in the air, a stark reminder of how close they had come to disaster. David then began experiencing severe paranoia. He installed multiple locks on every door and window, convinced that something or someone was trying to get in. His nights were spent pacing the house, checking and rechecking the locks, his mind racing with fear and suspicion. Karen began having vivid nightmares where she was trapped in a burning house, unable to escape. She would wake up drenched in sweat, the smell of smoke lingering in the air. The nightmares were so intense that she often found it difficult to distinguish them from reality, leaving her exhausted and on edge. Lauren's siblings started to see the bear moving on its own. They would hear it walking down the hallways at night, its eyes glowing in the dark. The sound of tiny footsteps echoed through the house, sending chills down their spines. The bear's malevolent presence was inescapable, its influence growing stronger with each passing day. The bear eventually instructed Lauren to pass him on. During a visit to a relative's house, she gave the bear to her cousin and walked away, leaving the Roberts to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. The Carters. The cousin who received the bear from Lauren was Emma Carter. The Carters were a happy family living in a spacious suburban home 3 states over. Emma's father, John, was a software engineer, and her mother, Mary, was a school teacher. Emma had an older brother, Ethan, who was in high school. Emma was a sweet, gentle girl, and the bear seemed like a perfect companion. Her family was pleased to see her so happy with her new toy. During the first few days, Emma was inseparable from the bear. She showed it off to her friends, took it on family outings, and even made a special bed for it in her room. The bear seemed to be a source of joy for her, and her parents were glad to see her so content. But the bear's influence over Emma was immediate and overwhelming. She began to act out in ways that were completely out of character. The whispers filled her mind, urging her to commit acts of violence and chaos. The Carters experienced a series of escalating horrors. Their house was plagued by unexplained phenomena. Objects moving on their own, doors slamming shut, and eerie whispers in the night. Emma's behavior became more erratic and dangerous. One night, she set fire to her bedroom, nearly burning the house down. Emma's parents, John and Mary, were deeply affected. John began to have violent outbursts at work, resulting in him losing his job. His once calm demeanor was replaced with a volatile temper, shocking his colleagues and family alike. Mary developed a severe depression, spending days in bed, overwhelmed by a sense of dread. The bear's whispers haunted their every moment, filling her mind with dark thoughts and fears. The weight of despair pressed down on her, making even the simplest tasks feel insurmountable. John began experiencing vivid hallucinations of Emma covered in blood, begging for help. The images were so real that he often broke down, unable to separate reality from the visions. The sight of his daughter in such a state left him paralyzed with fear, questioning his own sanity. Mary started hearing the cries of a baby echoing through the house, though there was no baby. The sound drove her to the brink of madness, making her believe she had lost a child. She would wander the halls, searching for the source of the cries, her heart aching with phantom grief. Emma's siblings began to see dark figures lurking in the corners of their rooms. They felt cold hands grabbing them in the middle of the night, leaving bruises on their skin. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, their presence a constant source of terror. As with the families before, the bear eventually commanded Emma to pass him on. During a family trip to the theme park, she handed the bear to a child she had never met and walked away. The Johnsons. The child who received the bear from Emma was Mia Johnson. The Johnsons were a struggling family living in a small, cramped apartment in the heart of the city. Mia's mother, Angela, was a single mom working 2 jobs to support her 3 children. Mia was the middle child, with an older brother, Alex, and a younger sister, Lily. The family had little, but they made do with what they had, and made the best of everything. Mia was excited to have the teddy bear and felt it was a special gift meant just for her. During the first week, Mia took the bear everywhere. She introduced it to her friends, played with it in the park, and even took it to bed with her every night. The bear became her confidence and best friend. Her siblings and mother noticed how happy she was with the bear, and it brought some light into their otherwise difficult lives. After the first week, the bear began to whisper to Mia. The whispers were insidious, creeping into her dreams and thoughts. Mia started to become withdrawn, spending more time alone with the bear. The bear's influence began to spread through the apartment, affecting everyone. The Johnsons experienced a series of terrifying events. Appliances would turn on and off by themselves, and strange noises echoed through the apartment at night. The flickering lights and sudden temperature drops added to the eerie atmosphere, unsettling the entire family. One night, the bear whispered to Mia, instructing her to harm her younger sister. Mia was found standing over Lily with a pair of scissors, her eyes blank and unseeing. The sharp blades glinted in the dim light, inches from her sister's neck. The sight was enough to send a chill down Angela's spine, realizing the depth of some other force having control over her daughter. Angela started having vivid nightmares of losing her children. She would wake up in a cold sweat, convinced that something terrible was about to happen. The dreams were so real that she often checked on her children multiple times each night, her heart racing with fear. Alex began to see shadowy figures in the apartment. He would hear his name being called from empty rooms, and once he felt a cold hand grip his ankle as he was getting into bed. The touch left a bruise, a tangible reminder of the haunting presence in their home. Mia started drawing disturbing images of her family in danger. One day, Angela found a picture of herself being attacked by a dark figure. The detail in the drawing was chilling, depicting Angela's face twisted in terror, the figure's eyes glowing with pure evil. Angela began hearing the bear's voice even while at work. It would tell her that her children were in danger, causing her to panic and rush home, only to find everything normal. The constant fear and anxiety began to take a toll on her health, leaving her exhausted and frazzled. Lily started having night terrors. She would wake up screaming, convinced that the bear was coming to take her away. Her cries echoed through the small apartment, adding to the family's growing sense of dread. The terror in her eyes each night was a painful reminder of their helplessness. The bear's whispers grew more insistent, telling Mia it was time to pass him on. On a trip to the park, Mia saw a little boy playing alone. Compelled by the bear's command, she handed it to him and walked away. The bear continued his journey, passing from child to child, family to family, spreading terror and chaos wherever it went. Each family tried to rid themselves of the curse by passing the bear on, but the cycle of horror continues. The story of the demon teddy bear became an urban legend, a cautionary tale told to children to warn them of the dangers that can lurk in the most innocent objects. It is said that the bear is still out there, waiting for its next victim, its whispers carrying the promise of nightmares and despair. The demon teddy bear is a reminder that evil can take many forms, often hiding in plain sight. Its story serves as a warning to always be cautious and to never underestimate the power of darkness. As long as the bear exists, the cycle of horror will continue, spreading fear and chaos to every family it touches. So, be wary of any gift your child or roommate comes home with.